A24 buried a Hereditary sequel that would have changed everything, and the reason they killed it is something they never wanted you to know. In late 2019, Ari Aster delivered a finished screenplay to A24 titled internally as Paimon. It was not a remake. It was not a prequel. It was a direct continuation of the Graham family's story, and it was greenlit. Then, without a single public statement, it disappeared. You were never supposed to hear about this. And the reason isn't creative differences. It isn't a budget dispute. It's something far more calculated, and it's still shaping every A24 horror release you watch today. Hereditary came out in June of 2018 and made $80 million on a $10 million budget, and more importantly, it made A24 look untouchable. Toni Collette's performance became a case study in film schools. Ari Aster became the studio's golden name overnight. So naturally, A24 wanted more. Not a cash-grab sequel, Aster himself wasn't interested in that, but a continuation that treated the cult of King Paimon as an ongoing mythology, something closer to what Hereditary had only hinted at in its final, horrifying wide shot. Development conversations started almost immediately, quietly, inside A24's Spring Street offices, while critics were still writing think pieces about the ending. By early 2019, this wasn't a rumor. A24 co-founder Daniel Katz signed off on a first-look expansion deal with Aster covering 2 projects, and internal budget memos, the kind that leak years later through production insurance filings, placed the Paimon continuation at $18 million, nearly double Hereditary's original budget. Toni Collette was approached informally about a limited involvement, and Alex Wolff was attached in early talks to return in some capacity. A director of photography was floated. Table reads were scheduled for the fall. This wasn't a pitch. This was a project moving through the machinery of a real production with real dollars behind it, real actors circling it, and a script Aster had already completed. Then sometime around October 2019, all of it stopped. No press release, no leak, no explanation. It simply vanished from every internal slate going forward. Here's where it gets complicated. Ari Aster's next film, Midsommar, released that July, and while critics loved it, it underperformed Hereditary at the box office. That alone gave A24 an easy excuse to quietly deprioritize a second horror bet from the same director. But that's not what actually killed it. What killed it is worse than a bad opening weekend. By 2020, A24 was quietly preparing for something much bigger than one movie, outside investment. The studio was in early talks that would eventually lead to a $225 million funding round in 2021, valuing the company near $2.5 billion. And the pitch to investors wasn't, "We make hit horror sequels." It was the opposite. A24's entire value proposition was scarcity, a brand built on being the studio that never repeats itself, that treats every film as a singular, unrepeatable artifact. A Hereditary sequel, no matter how good, would have been the first crack in that identity. It would have proven A24 could be talked into a franchise the same way every other studio eventually gets talked into one. So the decision wasn't about whether the Paimon script was good. Insiders who read it described it as darker and more structurally ambitious than the original. The decision was about what a sequel would signal to the market A24 was courting. Executives reportedly worried that greenlighting it would invite pressure for a Midsommar follow-up next, then a Lighthouse follow-up, and suddenly the studio that sold itself as uncompromising had a cinematic universe. Killing Paimon wasn't a failure of the material. It was a defensive move to protect a valuation. Think about what that means. Somewhere in a locked drawer is a completed Ari Aster screenplay that would have expanded one of the most acclaimed horror films of the last decade. And it was sacrificed not because it wasn't good enough, but because it was too dangerous to the illusion that A24 doesn't do sequels. The Graham family's story, left as an open wound in 2018, was meant to be reopened. Instead, it became the exact kind of buried project this brand quietly depends on to survive. So if A24 killed its best horror sequel to protect an investment round, what does that tell you about every original film they've released since? And which studio's boardroom secret do you think we should expose next?